again, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Can't Wait Sounds Terrible. That's Natalie. That's Patrick. And that's our special guest contributor, Sharon Van Zwieten, who is filling in for Eleni. Maybe Eleni will be like the new Wally Pip. Google that, kids. We are brought to you by the Board of Peace. Invasions will continue until morale improves, the Board of Peace. And we are also unofficially sponsored by North Face, Patagonia, Smart Wool, and Cayenne Pepper. We'll talk about that later. Anything to keep a Chicagoan warm. We have so much to cover today. And as usual, City Hall is just an endless resource for us, like natural gas. So let's talk about that. Maybe I'll give Patrick a spin on this first story. Of course, I want everyone to weigh in. Almost 20 years after then Mayor Daley did one of the most maligned business deals for the city ever, privatizing Chicago's parking meters for $1.15 billion. Mayor Johnson's administration is considering buying them back. And a number of city council critics who have feeling emboldened by everything, including their recent defeat of the mayor's budget, are already raising more questions than answers before the mayor's plan is officially rolled out. Alderman Bill Conway, who we will also talk about in a different context in a few minutes, has been very quotable on this. He's the vice chair of the city's finance committee, and he pointed out that the original deal was a disaster for taxpayers, and we have to make sure we don't compound that disaster. And Alderman Conway says the city worked very hard to create city-run grocery stores and couldn't pull that off. And now you're talking about, quote, a multi-billion-dollar deal. So, Patrick, should the city buy back those parking meters?
Color me skeptical, as we discussed on our long drive last week. Probably one of the worst deals ever struck on behalf of the public. So many questions raised, which would lead me to be suspicious and say, why is the seller willing to sell? Is it that they have a dim view of the people willing to drive into Chicago and spend lots of money to park? Do they feel that rates are maxed out and these things? The deal, I would agree with the concerns over compounding, one of the worst decisions made in municipal history, and believe that diligence is required. Let's all ask ourselves, why would they be willing to sell this phenomenal asset that has made billions of dollars? And why should the city?
I haven't really seen a lot of stories from the financial group that owns the meters today about selling, but I think you raise a good point. Natalie, what do you think? Should the city get in the parking meter business again, like they did forever?
What's the term that they teach you in business school? Sunk costs. I think it's time to move on.
Avoid sunk costs. Ignore sunk costs.
Don't spend sort of good city money after bad. Let it go.
It does seem like maybe we have enough trouble running the operation that we have, but the parking meters, they're always catnip for a variety of mayors to try to show that they're smarter than the previous mayor. So we shall see. In other news of trying to be first, Illinois is joining the race to get on the front side of the Democratic presidential primary calendar. Now, for many, many years, Natalie, the primaries started with Iowa and New Hampshire. Now, Iowa and New Hampshire, maybe not the most representative destinations in terms of looking like America, but that was the story for generations. And after Iowa had some trouble executing their caucuses, even though they had been running them for many years, several years ago, then President Biden moved South Carolina to the number one position in 24. And now the DNC is running an open application process to see who wants to be first or among the first as you head into Super Tuesday. A couple of interesting tidbits on this. Iowa has applied to get back in. They had a 100-page plus application. And according to the New York Times, the Illinois Democrats tried to downplay our solid blue status by saying that a Republican won an election for governor in 2014. So Eleni is not here to get a kick out of that, but because Ronner is the reason why Illinois should be a Democratic primary leader. Quote, there is a common misconception that Illinois can be taken for granted. So interesting little horse race for political junkies, Natalie.
Yeah, I mean it's definitely a new era, right? Where we just always assumed things would start in Iowa and New Hampshire, but after the meltdown out west, obviously things are moving around on the game board. I don't blame Illinois for trying to get its name in the running, but to your point, I mean, we're a blue island amid a sea of red. So I think the likelihood is dim, but obviously, you can't speculate as to some of the presidential ambitions of some of our statewide elected officials and wonder why we might want to be among those at the top of the list. So I don't think it's likely given all the things you said, but certainly not surprised to see them trying to get their name in the running.
Sharon, as a recovering journalist who has covered a number of elections over the years, this would be a big shift to go from relatively small population states where the candidates can get out and knock on doors and talk to actual local news editors to having to make their pitch in a several $1 million metropolitan area of Chicago plus downstate, or if you talk about some of these other states, to look at that more diverse and more populous areas. What are your feelings about that as an old political hand, despite your youthful appearance?
I just hope there are going to be elections. Really,
that's a good one.
I think it's very optimistic to think that we might get to a point of primarying and seeing who's available. Now, for obviously local and state elections, I do believe that there will be elections, and I just wonder if the primaries even hold the weight that they used to, and if it goes back to the Electoral College and the whole debate over that. There's something about our climate that feels so irrelevant right now.
Yeah, it used to be said, Patrick, that television was the new precinct captain. And now I think our smartphones are the new precinct captain, except that precinct captain is truly demented.
It's a very smart supercomputer. But, I think the idea of doing elections by the Ricky Bobby School of Political Philosophy, if you ain't first, you last, does have some consequences. I would point everyone to locking in your candidate early in 2024. Sometimes an election season is a season for a reason, and you want to see how folks can contort themselves through adversity, through those things. It's through the hardship that folks prove that they have what it takes to be commander-in-chief. And this idea of trying to anoint candidates very early in the process over time has something for debates. We can let
What
Ricky
we also
Bobby
saw in
decide.
the last election, what happened when you anoint someone very late in the process.
Fair.
Middle of the
That
road.
kind of attitude is going to get you knocked off the board of peace, Sharon. Speaking of the next election, Axios did a kind of gaslighty little poll of leading national Democrats. I don't know why they did this, but they did. Sent out a number of questions about transgender rights. And that is an issue that the Democrats really struggled with. Everyone remembers the critical moment during the 24 elections with the ads that the Trump campaign ran against Kamala Harris, Vice President Harris, saying that she is for they, them, and not for you. So they Axios sent questions out to Democrats saying, should transgender girls be able to participate in girls' sports? Do you believe in transgender youths under age 18? Should be placed on puberty blockers and hormones? And can a man become a woman? Most of the candidates, including the great governor of the state of Illinois, declined to answer. Few days earlier, Governor Newsom kind of stumbled on this topic when he had right-wing provocateur Shapiro on his podcast. That seems odd considering this issue has been a culture war issue for the past couple of years now at the urging and activism of the right. So they're continuing just to struggle with this question, with the exception of two people, blast from the past. So James Carville did some interviews saying based on his 81 years, men cannot have children. So he's pretty convinced about that. And Rahm Emanuel, former mayor of Chicago, who is signaling that he wants to run for president of these United States, said no to both and said parents should make decisions about whether transgender minors are able to access hormones, according to Axios. So Rahm is already staking out a position on these social issues, Natalie, that will not please the left and the community that's been pushing for LGBTQ rights. What's your take on that?
It's just so tricky, right? And it's just very clickbaity for Axios to do. And it's a curious topic to pick. I mean, obviously, we just had the Supreme Court arguments on this, the trans athletes. So there's some of it in the news cycle. But to quote another James Carville yarn, it's the economy, stupid. And I think the more we look backwards and focus on what the Democrats tried to create as wedge issues in previous cycles, the more we're going to continue to suffer the same fate. So less focus on social, cultural war issues and more focus on what's in your wallet.
Yeah, I was disappointed that Axios decided to do that, but I guess they did get results that had the political class doing a lot of chattering over the recent holiday weekend.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, let's come back to gaslighting and clickbaiting here in Chicago. So as the theoretically slower news weekend of the MLK holiday came upon the Chicago political writers, both the Tribune and the Sun-Times did some long pieces where they speculated about the list of potential candidates who Mayor Johnson may face in the 27 reelect, which comes up early in the year in 2027. So in the Tribune, 3 reporters contributed to a long story. Jake Sheridan, Adi Quigg, Alice Yin, saying a large and growing field of candidates is angling to take out Mayor Johnson, who is seen as very beatable. New campaign finance records show a couple of likely challengers holding commanding leads in fundraising. Host of candidates is listed in the story, from Alexi Giannoulis with his $6 million in the bank to Cook County Treasurer Maria Pappas, who at this point heading into her county reelection with no opponent, has less than $300,000 in her campaign coffers. Now, what Treasurer Pappas, Sharon, lacks in money at this point, she makes up for in her ability to come up with pithy quotes that the media loves, like this. Quote, "The city doesn't need Humpty Dumpty, and the city doesn't need a six-pack with no brains," Pappas told the Tribune, in apparent references to Mayor Johnson and Alexi Giannoulis. "The city needs someone like me who could come in there with the plan and pass the baton on." She's going to be a force to be reckoned with for
A
candidates.
gift that keeps on giving in addition to her annual calendars.
She's the only candidate that has a calendar in this race that I am aware of. Northside Congressman Bill Quigley says he is running for sure, focusing on the city's finances. "We can grow our way out of this problem easier than we can tax our way out of this problem," Congressman Quigley said. Alderman Bill Conway, who we talked about earlier, being skeptical of the city's efforts to buy back the parking meters, was more definitive in the Tribune story than I have seen him, saying that he is seriously considering running. A friend of the pod, attorney Bill Quinlan, is quoted in the story as considering a run. He represented fired former school CEO Pedro Martinez and said the mayor doesn't stand for Chicagoans, but instead stands for the teachers union. The Tribune also noted lobbyist John Kelly has raised $400,000. And businessman Joe Hoiberg, who is an unknown, has blown the caps with self-funding. Susana Mendoza, the Illinois comptroller, is also listed, although she is not officially announced yet. Patrick, I maintain that Mayor Johnson can still win this, especially if we have so many candidates. He appears to be working hard on his base. And his campaign said in the Tribune story, quote, organize, actually, he's Tribune and the Sun-Times, organized people beat organized money, taking a shot at the many better financed and or wealthy individuals lining up against him. And Fran Spielman interviewed Alderman O'Connor and former Alderman O'Connor, former Alderman Walter Burnett, who both pointed out that he can win this in a large field. Mayor Burnett saying it looks like he's fighting for the people. So from your listening post there in DuPage County, what do you think?
I think, like you, fundamentally, people need to look at this race. And what propelled Mayor Johnson to the fifth floor was organized labor, boots on the ground in the street. So folks can have great pithy quotes, they can get media, they can have social media, but how is that translating into chipping away at the coalition of support that exists and propelled him to victory at last cycle? And unless there's a workable strategy for that, there are a lot donors who can come up with fancy plans and pitch decks and so forth. But I think presumptively, people need to approach this race that he is the front runner and would at the very least be in the runoff. And what's your plan to get 50 plus one?
And notwithstanding the polls that don't turn out so great for the mayor at this point, although I do believe they're probably improving as he plays more to his base. Polls always change when you have someone that you are running against or you're defining against, Natalie.
Yeah, and that's why you've seen his numbers, with the tete-a-tete with the Trump administration, they've gone up. They're still dismal, but I think the more that he picks fights with a rogue administration, it certainly doesn't hurt his cause, only helps his cause. And as you said, he's feeding red meat to the base, and that's really where his focus is. And totally agree. I think he'll be one of the two runoff candidates if we don't get to 50 plus one in the first round, which I don't think we will with the numbers where we're at. So it's an important reminder to everybody who's dismissive of this administration that they're not going anywhere anytime soon.
So President Trump is helping Mayor Johnson. Life is full of irony. It is also full of terrible things. And so, Producer Grace, it's time for that sounder. It's time for the Sounds Terrible segment, the segment that everybody loves to see on our little podcast. So let's give Sharon a shot at leadoff on Sounds Terrible. What sounds terrible that you can't wait for, Sharon?
The Indiana Bears.
Ooh, another shot fired.
I know that the Giants play in New Jersey and other teams play out of their city, but I think particularly after the season we've had, Chicago needs and Illinois needs to dig deeper and figure out a deal.
Well, there'll be a lot of twists and turns in that one for sure. How about you, Patrick?
I'm going to stay in the world of sports, and I'm going to say what sounds terrible is you complaining about having to report with pitchers and catchers pretty soon down there, while the rest of us are still freezing up north dealing with zoning cases and these things. And you're going to be discussing your stressful days, working the media in Mesa, and I got to go check out this park. I mean, we are just preparing for the worst for you. And I know that sounds terrible, but
we are just 3 weeks away from
My favorite
being in
is if
Arizona.
you're talking to him on the phone, you can hear birds chirping.
Really
Just
terrible. I can't wait for it. It is so terrible for you, Dennis. I know I just wanted to get that out of the way. We appreciate your
I mean, in fairness, I could step on a cactus or a rattlesnake or something while I'm out there, so it's not without some risk. Natalie, what is the terribleness that you anticipate?
Well, we have a snowbird in our house, Grandma Bobby, who also complains about how cold it is in Florida, but that we have no sympathy for her. My sounds terrible this week. I think I can top all of you. We'll see what Dennis has, but I have a dentist appointment today.
Ooh, yes. You only get one set of teeth, and there is only one Boppy. Maybe she should be a special guest.
Singular.
All right, here's my sounds terrible. Getting back to the Bears, but a little different angle. So we're all still recovering in Chicago. The LA Rams, the Los Angeles Rams, beat our Chicago Bears in our frozen tundra of Soldier Field the other night in overtime by a field goal. That's That's terrible enough. And that's despite the heroics by quarterback Caleb Williams to get them into overtime. Still lost. It was very cold. And now it's even colder, as I referenced earlier. But how did these Los Angeles athletes stay warm here in Chicago? Well, here's what they told Frozen sideline reporter Melissa Stark. They put cayenne pepper in their socks. That sounds terrible. It might smell terrible. Ram nose tackle Puna Ford showed off his yellow and orange tinted socks after the game to prove. And apparently there are some, at least alternative medicine experts who agree that it does help ward off the cold. The spicy pepper has been shown to improve circulation and blood flow throughout the body. And there's a compound that I can't pronounce, which is in cayenne pepper, which helps to get the blood flowing. It sounds terrible. It most likely tastes terrible, but it helped the Rams give us a terrible outcome. So terribleness all the way around. Hey, if it's terrible, it's can't wait sounds terrible. And we can't wait to get together and talk again. Hang in there, everybody. We'll see you next time.